Welcome to Hot Springs Village Inside Out, a weekly podcast where Hot Springs Village, Arkansas is the star. Join me, Randy Cantrell, and my co-host Dennis Simpson as we discuss the history, facts, people, places, events, lots more surrounding Hot Springs Village, Arkansas. Visit the website at hotspringsvillageinsideout.com. Today's show is brought to you by Central Arkansas's favorite radio station, KVRE. Find them on the dial at 92.9 FM. Stream them live at kvre.com. Joining us from Lifenet, Tina Bell, Director of Recruitment and PR, and Matt Scroggins, Operations Manager. We talk about Lifenet inside Hot Springs Village. Enjoy. No, there isn't. We just hit the ground running. So go.
More ground running. And another episode of Inside Out. We're glad to have you today. We have Miss Tina and Mr. Matt from Lifenet. And if you don't know who these people are and you don't know why we're having them on, that's good news. If you've met them, you'll be happy to tell us what happened, I promise. Lifenet is the ambulatory service for Hot Springs Village, and we have a pretty special arrangement, I think. So Matt or Tina, either one, give us an idea. What is Lifenet? Who owns it? Who runs it? All that. And how do we pay for it?
I'll let you say who we are, and I'll talk about how we pay for it.
So Lifenet's a non-profit ambulance service. We operate out of 3 divisions in Arkansas, in the Hot Springs Village Division, Hot Springs, and Malvern. We also operate in Texarkana, which is where our home base is at. We have multiple different entities or regions within Texas that Lifenet also has operations in. And we also have Stillwater, Oklahoma. So we're kind of spread out, but we are a fairly large ambulance service, especially in Arkansas. We operate 3 trucks out of Hot Springs Village. They're contracted with a paramedic and an EMT on each truck, sometimes 2 paramedics, which is always an added bonus. And we staff them 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. I've started as the operations manager 3 weeks ago officially. So I'm there during the week, my phone pretty much 365, 24/7. So I am all over the place right now, just meeting and greeting and letting everybody know who we are.
And then as far as our unique arrangement with Hot Springs Village to provide ambulance service at the ALS level, which is advanced life support, that's where you're talking about there's a paramedic on every truck. To provide that level of service with 3 units in the village, there's just not enough call volume to support those 3 units. So the POA entered into what we call a resident benefit program, in essence, with us. And to support that, every member of the POA pays on their water bill a small fee. It's an ambulance service fee. And that goes to pay a subsidy that covers about 40 to 50% of our operating costs in the village. The other half of our operating costs is paid by when we bill the insurance or if you have to utilize us, those types of things. One of the misconceptions in the village is that if you have to be transported by the ambulance, it's free. You'll never get a bill. And that's not true because of what we just talked about, right? So half of our money comes from in essence, the resident benefit plan. The other half comes from the being paid for the services that we provide. So what we do basically, if you live in the village and you get transported, we're going to bill your insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, your insurance. If for some reason that claim is denied, so sometimes insurance may be denied, it's not medically necessary, we're going to help you appeal it. But if it continues to be denied, you're still responsible for that claim. But what we do is reduce your responsibility by 40%. The same is true if you don't have any insurance. We're going to reduce your responsibility by 40%. Now, here's the really good news. If your insurance pays anything at all, even a penny, you're not going to see a bill from us. Now, let me give you one little caveat to that. If that one little caveat is every now and then a bill may slip through. And so we always tell people, if it slips through, all you have to do is call our billing department and we're going to get it fixed. There is always that one little element of human error that could hit from every now and then. But our biggest priority is to take care of people.
Randy, I'm leaving it for you because there's a million questions.
And my first one would be, and I don't guess there's a typical, but I'll phrase it that way. If there is a typical destination, I mean, where are we typically taking these people to, and how far away are we taking them? Are we taking them just to facilities inside the village? Or are we taking them elsewhere?
We have to take you to the closest, most appropriate medical facility. Primarily, that is going to be CHI St. Vincent or National Park Hospital in Hot Springs. There are some rare occasions.
There are some residents that have local physicians that live on the east side of the village that are in Saline County. We also offer services to Saline Memorial and Benton, and there's a new heart hospital, it's Encore in Bryant, that we will also transport you to as well. So there's 4 different hospitals that we can directly transport you to.
But we can't transport you within the village. We have to take you to a hospital.
Well, what are some of the unique challenges of being in the village? I think I had heard something about getting an appointment every Friday, or getting a call every Friday afternoon about the same time to a candidate, to a client. Is that correct?
Say that again.
Well, I'm sorry. In one of the meetings, you were sharing that you had a. There's a lot of times. I think my boss had mentioned in the Rotary meeting was that there used to be a couple years and years ago that would go out to eat on a Friday night, and they would need assistance getting to the car, and then they need assistance again getting out of the car, and that was a use of public resource. They would call an ambulance to come help them with a public assist. What Ronnie was describing that night was that about 45 to 50% of our call volume is of a public assist nature or lift assist. Our transport rate, especially with COVID, has gone up, but our transport rate has either stayed the same or gone down because most people are either fearful of going to the hospital, or B, they're just wanting to be checked out or and refuse to go with us, which is not, we encourage them always to go to the hospital, but some people are just very fearful and don't want to go.
I will stress, kind of piggybacking off of what he's saying, we're working on trying to get some more education out to the community on how to prevent falls, because in Hot Springs Village, just by the nature of the demographics, that tends to be, we see a lot more lift assist calls there. And so we recognize we need to do some education to try to help the community. So that's something we're working on for later this year that we're hoping to roll out. But on top of that, one of the things we're working on and we do presentations for in the community is the appropriate utilization of the 911 service for emergencies. So there are only 3 ambulances in Hot Springs Village. Now we can call ambulances from our other service areas for mutual aid, but the reality is if we're responding to a lift assist and maybe your neighbor could have helped you, a friend across the street, somebody that could come and help lift you, when we're responding to that call instead, and your best friend who lives, 4 miles over is in sudden cardiac arrest, that paramedic can't respond to that call fast enough. I'm not saying that happens all the time, but that's part of the thing that we try to do to provide that public education is, if it's a traumatic injury, if you can't walk to the ambulance, if it's a heart issue, if you need oxygen, any of those types of things where we can respond and provide that advanced life support level care, call us. But if there are other people, and I think what's happened over time, actually, I know what's happened over time, not just in Hot Springs Village, but everywhere where EMS is located, is people have turned to utilizing EMS service as a ride, or like Matt was saying, as a public assistance. And unfortunately, it ties up the system for the resources it was really utilized for. And so that's one of the things we really try to provide that public education on.
Well, and we were talking a couple of other things in the meeting that we had talked about, or in the Rotary meeting that your boss had described. If I'm not mistaken, okay, I'm seriously hurt and I have to be lifted to Little Rock. What do we do? How do you determine that? Well, how do you know? How do you triage these things?
Are you talking about being airlifted?
Yeah. Well, I mean, how do you determine if somebody needs to be airlifted or if you're just going to drive? And I guess in my mind, what I'm thinking is that if if somebody's in the west end of the village, another couple of ambulances are tied up, somebody in the east end calls and says, hey, I've got a heart issue, take me to the Encore in Saline County. Man, you're tied up for 3 or 4 hours, I'm guessing. I mean, I'm trying to imagine how the dynamics work and how you juggle all that. And then in the middle of that, somebody has, and I had a friend of mine who actually had an issue where he had to be medevaced out. And man, it just gets complicated quick, it looks like.
Yeah, so the first part of it, I'll let Matt talk some of the on-scene side of stuff. But the very first part of it is when that call comes in, we use what's called emergency medical dispatch. And so our dispatchers prioritize based off of the priority of the call. They look at where all of our ambulances are in the system. And so that's not just Hot Springs Village, that's everywhere. And that's one of the pluses to having Lifenet in Hot Spring County, Garland County, including Hot Springs Village, is if for some reason those 3 ambulances are tied up, our dispatchers can look and say, okay, what is the closest unit to this call, and send that closest unit. And they go through a series of steps. So if you were to call and I would say, hey, thank you for calling Lifenet, what's the nature of your emergency? I'm going to walk you through a series of steps to determine what exactly is going on. And then we're going to prioritize that call. So you might be a priority 1, which means that's emergent, or you might have a lower priority. And so that's what we try to do on the dispatch side of stuff. Some of the symptoms that we might get, depending on where you're at, we may pre-launch Lifenet Air. We can always cancel them if our paramedics get on scene and we don't need them. But it really kind of depends. And that's a lot of that is done at the dispatch level. Sometimes the dispatchers will call somebody like Matt, the operations manager, and say, hey, Matt, this is what's going on. This is what I have. And sometimes Matt may make that call, or Matt may be the first one to respond on scene. I'm going to kind of hand it over to you to talk about maybe what happens on scene as far as triaging the patient.
So it's just like CPR. They say early activation is a key. Well, when you're talking about airlifting a patient to Hot Springs or to Little Rock, these are of time-sensitive things. So if you're having a stroke, there's guidelines of so many hours before you can get the clot-busting medicine to reverse the strokes. The heart attacks, there's some, time is muscle and time is, tissue and things like that. So where we want to get you to the appropriate facility that can handle your type of emergency. Also, and they talk about the golden hour. So we try to get people to the appropriate destinations, and it's there is stress involved, but there's a lot of thought process into a patient assessment to know how bad is this patient right now, based on their vital signs and their level of consciousness, and where they ask enough questions to kind of get a working diagnosis. We don't diagnose in the field, but we get a differential to where we think this is what is going on. And because of these signs and symptoms that this person's obviously showing signs of a stroke, and their loved one or a friend, and they say, they were talking to me, we were eating, and then 10 minutes ago they started slurring their speech and they can't move one side. Obviously, we could assess that is likely a stroke, and that of a time-sensitive nature, we could consider flying somebody out. Typically, we might fly somebody once a month inside the gates. I don't have that correct data, but it is not often.
And I'll piggyback off of that. There's a misnomer that flying a patient from Hot Springs Village is faster than going by ground. If we've pre-launched the helicopter because we know without a doubt that person's probably going to have to be flown, then that helicopter's there. But if we haven't and our paramedic ground crew has arrived on scene, it's about a 25 to 30 minute transport to the hospital. So if you think about, now we think we're going to need to launch the helicopter after they've done their assessment. Well, we could already have you in the ambulance and start going. Now we're going to have to call. The pilot's going to have to check for weather. They're going to have to call back. The crew's going to have to go get loaded. They're going to have to spend several minutes doing their spin up. Then they're going to take off and they're going to get there. Then we're going to have to load the patient and fly. And so sometimes when you think about all of that time there, again, depending on, that's what Matt and his crew have to decide on scene fairly quickly. Is it better for the patient to just go ahead and take them by ground because I can treat, I can do these things? Or does this patient maybe really need to go to Little Rock? Well, in that case, that helicopter is going to get them there faster. And then from a traumatic side of stuff, the other thing to think about is we don't necessarily make the decision on where a trauma patient goes. We call that into what's called Arkansas Trauma Com, and they tell us this is the hospital you're taking the patient to. And sometimes that plays into the nature of our decisions in triage as well.
So how often, what's the response time? How quickly do you try to be at the location?
Our goal is 8 minutes and 59 seconds within 90% of our calls for priority 1 emergencies.
Wow.
Priority 1, life-threatening, your strokes, your cardiac arrest, your heart attacks, altered level of consciousness. There's a whole lot of different key factors, and that's through our dispatch based off what you give us. They have to ask questions to find out specific details of what's going on, and their system categorizes it into a priority 1 or 2 or 3. And so for where the truck is at and where they get towed, they have an 8 minutes and 59 second response time to get in route and check on scene. And our compliance is to be 90% for the month for those calls.
That includes an ice storm, right? Even in an ice storm, right?
Nice.
There are some exceptions, but even in the ice storm, we still try to do what we can.
But, Matt, you might tell him where the 3 locations are when we're at post, where those are at kind of in the village.
So here's something kind of neat that we do. We have one station on the west end at Colella, which is right there on Los Lagos across from the radio station, which is where my office is at. My office is always an open door, so you're always more than welcome to have coffee and come by and talk. But we keep Medic 17, which is our Colella truck there. We also have Medic 18, which is at our Cortez station, and they share the house with the fire department at Cortez, at 110 Cortez, I believe. We also have a Balboa's truck, which is coordinating with the fire department there across from Balboa Baptist. And all 3 of those trucks are housed when they're not on calls. If they are both out, we always post the single truck in the middle of the village. So if 2 of the trucks go out of the outlying areas or vice versa, or whichever rotation, the single truck will go post until another truck comes back inside the gates, and then they can go back to their post.
We call it system status management. So basically we're moving ambulances around the best that we can to serve all of the residents based off of what's going on. I mean, in the perfect world, all 3 ambulances would be available all the time, but inevitably all 3 ambulances get a call at the same time, or 2 of them get a call at the same time. And so we want to be as centrally located as possible to service everybody.
What percent of the calls that you get are lift and assist, or calls that in y'all's judgment could have been better satisfied with a lesser resource than you guys?
I think the better way to word that is probably, I think you said earlier, about 50% of our calls are of the public assist nature.
Okay.
So it may not necessarily be that there's a better resource. I mean, if you don't have a neighbor, you don't have a friend, but sometimes I think people have just gotten so dependent on, we'll call 911 for this, and they haven't thought outside of, when I was, it was not uncommon for us to all know all of our neighbors. So you would pick up the phone and, call your neighbor if you needed something. And now a lot of that is, I think.
Well, I worded it that way on purpose because part of what we would hope to do is help you guys get the word out. And I realize that you're going to do this educational initiative later in the year, but I did that to tee up this. So what can we do if we realize that we've got neighbors, maybe we know or we don't know of their health issues, but I'm thinking particularly even of the kids, I say kids, the children, adult children in the village who mom and dad live down the street. It's a pretty safe bet. By the time we reach our 80s, we're definitely at much higher risk than if we're in our 50s or 60s. Dennis and I know a number of people who we had beverages with a listener just a month or so ago, and he talked about a 94-year-old widow who lived in their cul-de-sac, and, they all kind of chip in and help her. I mean, they roll her trash out to the street and they roll the trash back after it's been picked up and that sort of thing. So what are some things that villagers could do, to help their neighbors or help their family, that wouldn't tie you guys up and cause a problem for somebody that might be in much more desperate need of your service?
I think it's exactly what you just said. Get to know your neighbors, and let them know, hey, these are typically the times when I'm home. If you need something, if you fall, if you whatever, call me first. I think that would be a huge, huge help. And then I think it's just really understanding, again, that appropriate use of the resources and really thinking through if I'm calling that ambulance and I could have gone by car, or somebody else maybe could have taken me, or did I really need to go to the emergency room? Could I have gone to a clinic in the village that somebody could have taken me to? Now, on the flip side, we don't want to deter people from calling because now they're going, I don't really know. If you think it's an emergency, call us. We want to come and help. One of the things that we really saw during COVID was people would call us because they were just scared. They were, like he was saying earlier, I'm scared to go to the hospital and I don't know what else to do. So maybe the paramedic can come and talk to me. Or maybe I'm a diabetic and I think my blood sugar's gotten too high and I don't really, that could be a very serious thing. So maybe it's not the best example, but they just have us come out and do welfare checks. Well, there are other places within the village that can actually do those welfare checks. If you really truly have no intention of going to the emergency room, that's our job. Our job is to take care of you in an emergency and take you to the emergency room. And so I think part of it, what can you do to help? If you're listening to it, help us provide that education in the community. And then the other side is be a resource for your friend and neighbor. We're not trying to get out of work, but we want to make sure that our resources are available when people actually need them.
Yeah, we've had Chief Middleton on the show a few times, and Chief Middleton, urges villagers, and he has even on our podcast twice, to call them. I mean, if you need help, so, I mean, I don't know, Dennis. I mean, that she was answering that was my first thought is, man, pick up the phone and call the police department inside the village. I mean, they are at your service.
Yeah. When you call 911, it's going to go to the police department first. As long as you tell people that's one of the best things that you can do. If you live in Hot Springs Village and you call 911, that's the first thing you should say. I live in Hot Springs Village, Arkansas, and this is the nature of my emergency. That way it can be transferred back to Chief Middleton's team, their dispatch team. They're called the Public Safety Answering Point, and they're going to figure out what's going on. Now, if you say you need a lift assist, that's considered a medical emergency. It's going to be sent to Lifenet, and that's not necessarily the police department's job. We're not going to try to pass that on to them. I think, if I'm going to encourage you to utilize other resources, my encouragement is going to be, if you have friends and neighbors, if you don't have anybody else, call us. We are, there to help, and we want to help people. Just recognize that if there is somebody else that can help you, we would rather keep those resources available for the emergencies.
Well, to our listeners and viewers, I want to make a comment, and that is the dynamics are not lost on anybody here. And we're talking about the greatest generation as a rule, Randy, that is the 80 and 90 plus. They don't ask people for help. They don't ask. So neighbors, if you're listening, go and offer your help. Go and say, hey, I'm across the street. You want me to help you with that trash? Or, if you have anything, give me a call. I'll be happy to come see. To the person, I do not know a person in the village when asked for help that would not readily help you immediately. But the oldest generation, the greatest generation, is not going to ask. That's not their way.
I'm going to piggyback off of that. I was listening to a different podcast on my way here. I know you're surprised. You're not the only podcast you listen to. But I was listening to another podcast on the way here today, and they were talking about a study that they had done on people being lonely. And I know this may sound surprising, but it is not uncommon for us to get a phone call just because somebody is lonely. And it may be by the time we get there, we may be the only person they have seen in a week and a half or 2 weeks. And so when you say, anyway, they talk about there are actually companies out there. I thought, man, this is genius. They are finding ways to get people to pay them, and they're hiring college students to go out and basically be friends. And they have seen the overall health of these people go up. Well, we want to be as friendly as we can, but again, we need to be available for the emergencies. And so when you said that, made me flash back to that of people, not only are they not going to ask for help, but when they're lonely, they're not going to go across the street and say, hey, I'm lonely. And so neighbors helping neighbors really becomes that, be that bridge and get to know the person. There are so many, and Matt and I both, one of my favorite things about my job is just getting to go around and talk to people and hear their stories. And I mean, like he said, I get to travel over 3 states, service areas, talk to people. And my favorite stories always come, a lot of them, from people in Hot Springs Village, because it is such a melting pot of people from everywhere with such unique backgrounds. And so anyway, if nothing else, it's an opportunity to help that way too.
Yeah. I was going to make note, the Meals on Wheels program is very strong and does a great thing here. But I mean, think about it. So if we didn't have a Meals on Wheels program, people would starve. Hardly. It's just a great way to keep checks on people and say hi and have that human interaction and, to connect with people. And again, on another podcast, I heard they were talking about how the average size of the average American home is shrinking, that it's, more and more people are living by themselves a lot of times. And that presents its own series of problems. Now, and Ricky, we've talked about this, and I'm remiss because we haven't done it. We'll touch on the smart 911 system. Matt, would you comment about that? Because I think that's an excellent program and we really need to have Ricky back on to talk about that. But tell people what the Smart 911 program is.
Sure. So Smart 911 is basically the vial of life that you are educated about. That you can put the sign on your door and you can put the vial of your medication and your medical history and your demographics, your information, and holding that in the freezer. Basically, that turns this information into your smartphone. So downloading Smart 911, if you call for an ambulance or fire or police in the dispatch center, it pulls up a screen and it shows your name and your information, your medical history, your medications you're taking, so and also your address, so we can pinpoint your location. So in the village, so easy to find streets out here, whether it's a way or a lane or a trail, the spider web, the entanglement of the village, it's very precise knowing where you're at, because some people might get lane or way crisscrossed and you may be in 2 different zones of the village just by the same street. So Smart 911 will actually ping on the map where the dispatchers can tell our ambulances exactly where to turn to get exactly to your residence. You can also detail the outside of your house, the colors of the vehicles, your neighbor's house, the dogs. You can put all those demographics in there to where you can provide enough details, even hide keys or lock boxes. Those are very pertinent too, because some people that live alone and say they fell and you hit a pendant alarm and we don't know what's going on. That information is very vital to us making entry and coming and helping somebody in their time of need. So Smart 911 is very, very awesome because we are now becoming so technology dependent. All you have to do is just update it and open your app up every 6 months to keep it active. And if you're worried about private information being released, that stays on the screen and dispatch for only a certain amount of time. I think I was told maybe 40, 45 minutes at best, because what if your phone dies and you have to call back again? It still keeps that information. But then once that time limit's reached, then it goes away. It's not stored, it goes away. So there's no patient advocacy issues. So if that's one thing people are concerned with. So this is an awesome app that everybody needs to do because
it's free.
And yes, yeah. And it's free. It's for everybody.
And what's the bypass going to do for us? Hopefully that's going to be open in hopefully the next 60 days, I would hope.
Some of the talk sites roughly 5-6 miles across. And they have said that it could possibly save up to 10 to 15 minutes by us diverting away from downtown and Park Avenue and all that congestion. We typically should be able to save transport times and turnaround times back to the village.
Yeah, and just a kind of a 5 mile high view here real quick for the listeners outside the village and inside. The bottom line is that, excuse me, if you're staying downtown, if you're at the Waters or any of the places downtown, those are beautiful, great hotels and it's nice and wonderful. But every support vehicle has to come down that highway, unless they're going to go through Gulf of Gorge. That's the way you get into town. That's it. So the new bypass will take us down Highway 7. We'll come through the roundabout, which I think you're going to be working lots of accidents there soon. That's a joke. And then as soon as the freeway, the bypass opens there, it'll basically takes you right back down to the hospitals. You're at the national park or you're at CHI in a whole lot quicker traffic system. And you're not going through downtown, light sirens, et cetera, et cetera. Hopefully that's going to take a lot of stress off the downtown route.
Absolutely. And it's going to take a lot of pressure off the village trucks since we are already housed this far out in the county. That's going to be a major vessel for us getting to and from Hot Springs and transporting our patients.
What are some major things that you want our audience to know that we haven't covered?
So I will throw out there, if you're thinking about a second career, or maybe you have a grandson, a granddaughter, a younger generation that you're raising. I mean, there's all ages in the village. There is a national shortage of EMTs and paramedics. Here within the state of Arkansas, the Arkansas Ambulance Association released this fall, they did a study, and of all of the licensed EMTs and paramedics in the state of Arkansas, only 42% of them are practicing right now. A lot of people are surprised to learn that EMT school is literally one semester. Here National Park College in Hot Springs, you go two days a week, so you can still work another job while you're going to school, and then you can be an EMT. Once you become an EMT, if you want to go on to be a paramedic, it's another year. Lifenet will pay for all of your paramedic school. We don't pay for EMT school because we're just you have to take that first initial step. It costs about $1,500 total, but whether it's part-time or a full-time job that you're looking for, we hire for both. And again, if you want to find a way to serve your community, that's a great way. And I always like to give plugs for the other agencies too. If you're just looking for somewhere to volunteer, we have to have you trained to work for us. But the Hot Springs Village Fire Department, they also take part-time volunteers, and they'll put you through training. The chief would have to obviously talk to you more about what their training looks like. But anywhere within the county, all of the volunteer fire departments are also needing help, and they assist us too. But I would definitely want to put it out there to your listeners. I mean, my oldest EMT that I've ever interviewed and hired was 68 years old. Once he retired, he wanted to serve the community, so he went to EMT school, and he was solid. He did it for us for about 2 years, and then decided he really wanted to go back to retired life. But it's not uncommon for it to be a second career for people. So if people are interested, they can reach out to me, and I would love to help talk them through that process.
What are the attributes that would make a great EMT or a great paramedic? What are you looking for?
I think you have to have a heart for serving others. You have to be humble, because you see a whole lot of different things, and it's literally a career all about serving other people. You have to have drive. I think you have to teamwork is another big thing. Mm-hmm. You work in a team. I think you have to be people smart. So you have to really understand that we're dealing with people on their worst day. And sometimes we also work in partners. And sometimes, I come to work some days and I am the happiest person on earth. And other days I rolled out of bed and Grumpy Bear showed up, and so, but you have to always show up as the happy person at work, because you're seeing people on the worst days of their life, and you interact with every single personality. And I often tell people, if you can answer this question, and I don't want the answer, but internally think it, am I the type of person that can leave work at work, or am I the type of person that takes what happened at work home with me and I just can't let go? If you're the type of person that can leave work at work, you're going to be great at this position. If you're the type of person, because again, we see a lot of different stuff, and we go home every single day, and our paramedics, even our dispatchers, can say, I know I made positive differences in the lives of every single person I saw. And that's the rewarding part of what we do. But there's that tough part too. And so I'll actually, that's a conversation I have, because I do career coaching for people that are looking at EMT or paramedic. That's one of the conversations we have in depth. And some people I'll talk out of the career, and other people I'm like, you are the perfect fit for this. So I don't know, is there anything you'd add?
I think you did it well. Mine is, having a great personality and serving others, because you're in it for the wrong reasons. Because people are trusting you. And that's what I love about the village. You know, they're super respectful because a lot of them are retired professionals and they understand that we're professionals as well. And so they enjoy the report and the personalities. I mean, most of them know most of our EMTs and medics by first name basis. You know, you can't go anywhere without one of them, you know, like, hey, you know, Matt, how's it going? You know, they just know them because they're of their personality and their nature, and they know that they're out there making sure they're safe.
Tina, it may be premature, but as you move forward toward the latter part of 2022 and your educational initiatives, can you give us some teasers as to what that might look like and how you're approaching that?
Yeah, so one of the things we've been brainstorming on it. It's fairly new. We started the overall brainstorming, trying to put stuff into place today. We're looking at doing stop the bleed training. We talked with the police department about even partnering with them in some of their initiatives, because you guys know that they do a lot of community training to reach some of their people. But stop the bleed training is the first training we're looking at doing. And then the second one later this fall, our goal is to do, again, how to prevent falls. What can you do within your home? What are things you can think about those? Because prevention is half the battle, you know, if we can prevent it from happening in the first place. And then outside of that, we do bystander CPR classes. So the fire department actually will do a full class. The difference between bystander CPR and a full class is that bystander CPR class is only about an hour. A full CPR class is somewhere between 4 to 6 hours, depending on who's teaching it and what program you're going through. The bystander CPR, we'll come out. The class itself is 20 minutes. We teach you how to do chest compressions on an adult, and we teach you how to use an AED. That's probably the initiative I'm the most passionate about, mainly because if somebody goes into sudden cardiac arrest in the village, we told you guys earlier, our response time is 8 minutes and 59 seconds. If you haven't started chest compressions within those first 3-5 minutes max, when those paramedics get on scene, it's already too late. We're not going to get them back. That's just what data from the American Heart Association shows. And so we tell people, if you're part of a group or if you want to get a group together, all we require is 10 people. And one of our team, whether it's Matt, whether it's me, one of our other paramedics, Ryan, who does a lot of community outreach up here, he'll come out and teach that class. But as far as what we're looking at those are two, the Stop the Bleed community-wide, and then that how to prevent falls in the community are the two big classes we're looking at doing, just kind of like a community-wide event to have people come out to.
Is there any tracking of, and I don't know if I'm using the proper language, so pardon me, certified CPR, people that have gone through that longer training, who've got some type of certification of doing CPR? Is there any kind of tracking of those people?
There's not. There are organizations out there that have apps available, but they are like thousands of dollars per community to purchase in. And if we were part of a community that purchased that, that's available. But right now there's not. Those apps actually, like, I'm certified in CPR. And so if I had that app set up and was tied into the 911 system, it would send out a ping and I'd be like, oh, I'm nearby and can do it. But again, right now the technology, the people are a little too proud of it. And so implementing it in communities without grants it's not functional right now. But again, knowing who your neighbors are, right? So if I know that my neighbor is CPR certified, or if I know that I can literally just donate 1 hour of my life to learning how to do chest compressions. And that's the key in adults who go into sudden cardiac arrest. Large percentage of the time, it's not respiratory related, unless it was a drug overdose, unless I drowned. Primary reason I go into sudden cardiac arrest is I just ate too many fried chickens and hamburgers and all that fun stuff growing up, and I have a cardiac problem. So I just need chest compressions for about 20 minutes. My body has enough oxygen. Now the opposite, we need to teach you some more skills, but that's why we teach that class. So if there's people.
It'd be great to know if there was somebody on my street that had gone through the certification, of CPR. Be nice to know. And you would think that somebody who's gone through that, they wouldn't mind you having their number. I mean, they went through the training, so they've clearly got the willingness to help. So
I'll tell you the other side of things that people don't know that we do is often when our paramedics get on scene for a sudden cardiac arrest, they know that a bystander did CPR, and they know down the road, we often know that the patient survived. but we don't know how to connect the two. So we do what's called a Lifenet Lifesaver Award. So let's say I went into sudden cardiac arrest and we were all in the same room. You did CPR on me until Matt arrived. Matt could nominate you for the Lifesaver Award or somebody else who witnessed it. And then we get to hopefully reunite you with the patient about 6 months later. We try to give them time to recover from that traumatic event. That's one of my very favorite things to do. But a lot of the times it's one of my favorite things to do because you get to hear those stories of, I was in the right place at the right time, but again, it's because somebody took the time to learn and not just learn the skill. I tell people CPR is like riding a bicycle. If you don't practice it, you don't remember it. It's one of my favorite stories is repeatedly, I will see people who they haven't done it and they go to do CPR on the belly button. And I tell people, when you say the Pledge of Allegiance, where's the heart? But it's because for us, it's, if you've gone through CPR training, naturally my hand just goes here and this is how fast I push. And this is how because it's muscle memory. And I tell people anytime you see a mannequin that somebody's doing CPR on, you start practicing.
Yeah. Well, I actually, I think this is a little differently because I'm thinking, Randy, we're wanting Randy to move to the village and be an insider, and the idea that I would know how to work those paddles in case he needed to be shocked back. That's appealing right there. Cause how did you bring him back? Well, I wasn't going to give him CPR, but I shocked him real good and he came right back and came up swinging anyway.
That's why I'm not going to live in your neighborhood. I'm going to be in a much safer neighborhood than Dennis's.
I got an app. Hang on. I got a ping. I got to run over and hit Randy.
Yeah. But that technology thing that you spoke of, I mean, it's a shame. It's a shame that's out of the price range. I mean, something like that. Come on. That
should be a national thing where the government provides.
Need to be a little more altruistic than that, but it's great. I was curious, but I had no idea that technology was even out there, which is why I asked. But because in a place like the village, given the background of so many people, like Matt said, how diverse the community is, I'd be curious how many certified CPR folks there are inside the village. I bet it's a decent number.
I bet it is.
I could be wrong, but I bet it's a decent number. Yeah. We need to marshal these people together.
Like I said, I'm with you, Randy. I had no idea there was even an app like that. And I would think, especially, the stats that I've heard, where's the safest place to have a heart attack in North America? You have any idea?
I don't.
Casinos. Every one of them, they have right beside the fire extinguisher, they've got the paddles. Now, does that mean they're going to use them correctly or that, no, whatever, who knows? But I find it interesting that in places where that there's not a whole bunch of 20-year-olds. Are you just trying to
convince yourself of that because of your love for casinos? Or
I'm so safe.
I'm so sure. I'm not sure about that.
Going to sudden cardiac arrest in one of Lifenet's posts where there's an ambulance. That's where I would feel this.
Yeah, exactly.
And the AED, and they have the cardiac medicine that they need to be giving me.
Yeah, I would like to be visiting somebody in a cardiac unit of a hospital and then have it happen to me. So.
Yeah. Well, Randy, I know this is a different time and we have some other things to talk about here a little later on, but do we have enough lightning round for Matt and Tina?
We can't. I mean, we can. It's up to them. I wasn't going to try to burden them with it. This is the fun part of the show, guys.
Well, before we go there real quick, I want Matt to talk or Tina to talk. As I understand it, your contract is coming up for renewal this year. Is that what I understand?
Yes, at the end of December.
Okay, so have we had a contract renewal lately, or how have we been doing that?
That's a great question that I don't think either one of us are well versed in because he's 3 weeks into his position. I've been with us for 4 years.
Okay.
But, if people want to know, how can you support that? If you've been happy with the service that you have provided, let the POA know that, okay. We love being part of Hot Springs Village. We love what we do. We're dedicated to being part of that community. Hope that, we're there for years to come. We have no intentions of not being
Well, this is one of those services, and I wanted to just make my own interjection here. This is one of those services that I'm not always fond of having the lowest cost provider, if you know what I mean. I know you guys have been here for decade, decades and have done a fantastic job. And when we heard that there was going to be a contract negotiation or whatever this year, I'm like, well, why would we do that when it ain't broken? And okay, yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that point up. And Tina, you make an excellent point. If you're pleased with the POA service, or with the Lifenet service, please let the POA know. Please. That's going to be a big factor, I believe. And I think the board and the staff needs to know that they're doing a great job. I mean, 8 minutes and 59 seconds inside of 510 miles of roads inside the village. Good luck with that. Yeah. And there's not a straight road in the village, I don't believe at all. Not more than a quarter mile, you know.
And how long have you guys been servicing the village?
Since 2009, I believe.
Okay.
I think that sounds about right.
I think that's the year. You know, the good thing about the village is what people may not understand is that we have some of the most tenured staff working inside the gates. We've got some medics that have been here since Lifenet started in the village and want to retire there. So that is lots of knowledge within these paramedics and EMTs, and they love being in the village. They have built their lives and families around the village. Some have even moved inside the gates. So we have really planted a lot of seeds and roots throughout these years and hope that we continue that, building, fostering those relationships.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, very much, very much. Randy, why don't we try some lightning round questions?
All right, we're gonna alternate. Okay, so we're gonna start with you, Tina. So these are quick and easy and painless. Hamburger, tacos, or pizza?
Ooh, cheese pizza.
Hiking, hunting, or fishing, Matt?
Hiking, hunting, or fishing. It's definitely not hiking, obviously, by looking at me, but I'll take hunting.
Beaches or woods, Tina?
Oh, beaches.
Texting or talking, Matt?
Talking.
Favorite day of the week?
Ooh, Saturday.
Favorite city in the U.S. besides the one you live in, Matt?
Vegas.
Yeah, well, don't have a heart attack there, even though
Tina now knows more about Matt than she did 5 minutes ago.
All right. Do you have a nickname, Tina?
Tinkerbell.
Tinkerbell.
Okay.
I can't imagine Matt having a name like that. Matt, you don't have a.
Do you have a nickname, Matt? Look at him. He doesn't want to share.
That you want to share? That you want to share?
No,
Probably not for podcast related.
If you don't have one that you want, if you have one that you don't want to share, then we definitely want you to share it.
Yeah.
So I want to tell you something. There's one of my dispatchers calls me Scroggins. Don't ask me why. She calls me Scroggins, one of my dispatchers. It sticks. My wife is a teacher in Jessieville, teaches Algebra 1 and 2, and her kids call her Scrog Dog.
Yeah, that sounds
I've been called that before 2 years ago, but they just base it around your last name, and it's all for fun.
I like it. Okay, Tina, current favorite band or musician?
Oh, Tasha Layton.
Who?
She's a Christian singer.
I know. I didn't.
What's her name? What's her name again?
Tasha Layton. Look What You've Done. That's my favorite song right now.
Well, I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah.
All right, I got to give you that, Matt. I got to give you that question. Favorite musician or band?
Garth Brooks or George Strait.
All right, here for both of you. You got an hour to do nothing. What are you going to do?
Oh, right.
I'd love to play golf.
Play golf?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Tina, what are you going to write? Like, what kind of writing do you like to do?
I like right now. So right now I'm really into, like, I'll find a scripture and then I go research the scripture and then I just write about something that's impacting my life. So that's kind of my hobby right now for about the last 6 or 7 months.
Great hobby.
It is. I like that. that.
So Matt, where would you play golf?
I love playing in the village.
No, I mean, where in the village?
My favorite is probably Ponce.
I knew you were going to say, I was going to say, I bet he's thinking Ponce. It's hard.
How long have you played golf?
Since, let's see, how old am I now? Probably almost 20 years.
Oh, long time. Look at you.
I played golf in college.
Okay. Where?
Yeah, my wife took a golf course in college, and we moved out here to the village. And I said, "Do you want to walk a golf course? Walk the holes?" And she said, "All 16?"
Yeah, well, that may not be the kind of golf that Matt played in college. So did you play on a collegiate team?
I played, we had a community college in Moulton, but we played UCA in Conway, which is now a Division I team, Arkansas Tech, the University of Fort Smith, and then we played a lot of Oklahoma teams. So there was a lot of good competition. I mean, it was, junior college level basically. And then I had a chance to walk on at SAU in Magnolia, but then life kind of changed and I got into the real world and started working for EMS.
Yeah, but it sounds like you're a legit golfer. Good for you. Says the guy on the show that doesn't play golf. All right. Go ahead. You used to what?
I said I used to be, but any golfer, the amount of time it takes to practice and play at a level that at the caliber that any collegiate athlete plays at is insurmountable. I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, you can't have a day job. You got to be an unemployed college student to do that.
Yeah.
Basically.
All right, Tina, favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Matt?
Same.
Okay, first jobs. Tina?
First job, I was a file clerk at a doctor's office back before stuff was electronic.
Matt?
General utility guy as a college student at a paper mill.
Either one of you play a musical instrument?
I used to play the flute, but I picked it back up about a year ago, and I learned I can't read music anymore.
So now you don't.
I can't read a sheet of music.
Yeah. Matt?
Do you
play anything?
I could play chopsticks on the piano, but I don't know if that constitutes as.
Hey, we've had people say that they play the radio, so.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hey, I play the radio.
What's your favorite meal? Both of you. Tina?
Oh, I actually know that one. Eggplant Parmesan.
Okay. Matt?
Mine would be tacos.
Well, you just said you didn't like tacos. We had a
No,
guy
I didn't like tacos.
Did you say that?
No, he didn't say that.
I'm sorry. We had a guy this morning who said he watches every one of the lightning rounds and nobody ever says tacos. And so he wanted to know where a good taco place would be. I'm sorry. I was sleeping. I was sleeping.
Yeah. Okay. First concert. I've only got a few more. First concert that Vince Gill?
Livestock Show and Rodeo.
Alabama.
Oh, I'm jealous.
I'm telling you.
Look at her. She heard Vince Gill and she's jealous over Alabama. Who'd have thunk it? I mean, so there's something inherently wrong with that. Funniest movie. Matt, funniest movie.
National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Tina.
Crapper's full.
Yeah, I don't know because I have an almost 8-year-old, and my entire repertoire of movies recently. Like Sing 2 or Boss Baby 2. I love Boss Baby 2, and there's some
There you go. Boss Baby 2. Yeah, that's a first. Okay, favorite sports team, Tina?
Oh, I don't have a favorite sports team. I'm boring there.
Whoop Pig Suey.
Matt?
Oh, yeah. Anything Razorbacks. Diehard Razorbacks.
All right. Last one. Favorite quote? Tina?
My favorite quote, it is literally just escaping. I can think of it. It is something to the effect of, too often we quit right before the blessing that is on the other side of our endurance.
Well, even if you didn't get that right, that's good.
Yeah, we'll make that a new Tina quote.
Exactly.
I like that.
Do you have one, Matt?
Tina 316.
Yeah. Have you got one, Matt?
My past fire chief back home would always tell us, be safe and ever ready.
Ooh. Good advice.
For y'all's line of work, that's especially timely. Mm-hmm. Dennis?
Well, I just want to wrap up and say, Matt and Tina, thank y'all so much for joining us. And it seems like, I don't know that we're on a thread or anything here, but we're trying to show people that are behind the scenes a little and what they're really like. And these are obviously hardworking people who are dedicated, devoted to the village. And if you get a chance, pat them on the back, say thanks, say hi, call the POA, tell them you like the job they're doing. And actually I think a couple of prayers wouldn't hurt you folks either, because every time I heard the sirens going off, I'm thinking somebody's having a bad day.
Yeah, and they can even stop buy Matt a cup of coffee right there.
Yeah.
I don't have to buy it. Matt will give it to him.
Yeah.
You can probably sit down with coffee with me.
Yeah.
Would do that. I tell you what, I really would, Randy, we need to talk about this. The Westgate, the Colella, and Colella, it's Colella.
Yeah, Colella.
The Colella, the Cortez, and the Balboa. I think, we might need to throw some pictures in of what those places look like. People need to know where the fire station is. They need to know where the resource centers are like that. And, that could possibly come in kind of handy. Y'all don't man anything. You're not at the fire station down on Balearic under.
We aren't. We do not house an ambulance at that station.
But there is fire at that station.
But there is a fireman. Yes, they have a fire station there at Coronado.
Wow.
The Coronado station.
Well, I want to take the chance again, say thanks again to Matt and Tina. Thank you for joining us. Thanks for Lifenet. Thanks for how you've literally always got our back, even in a snowstorm. So thanks so much. We'll see you next time for Hot Springs Village Inside Out.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Hot Springs Village Inside Out, a podcast where Hot Springs Village, Arkansas is the star. Please subscribe to the podcast. You can do that by visiting our website, hsvinsideout.com, and tell a friend.